Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Just a couple of questions for you that I'm going to ask you based on the fact that you've been around for a while, you've been an activist, you worked for the Secretary of State's office, so that's why I'm going to ask you these things. So I think my first question is, are you aware that there are audits done on past elections, and in any of your official or unofficial capacities, did you ever have the opportunity or cause to review those audits that looked into things like, dead voters and all that kind of stuff
Yes.
in the past?
Yes.
Okay, and did you find that the answers to those questions were that in fact these were clerical errors in previous audits that have been done by the Legislative Auditor General and before this committee in the recent years?
So I've worked with Chris Thomas for years, and I've submitted some illegal stuff that I thought was illegal to them to investigate, and they were investigated. How they remedied it was not according to what I felt was necessary. There have been clerical errors, if you call it clerical. The law concerning your ability to be a precinct inspector, a poll worker, is that you have to have a sufficient clerical acumen in order to perform the duties, which means you should be able to read and write and add and subtract. And you should be able to perform the duties without any inhibitions. We know that there are over 500 precincts in Detroit, and many of the people who will come and get trained, some of them will not show up. But the ones that do show up, they are not given sufficient training on how to legally perform the duties that they have. However, if they are told that the challenger is the enemy, this person standing behind you is the enemy, and they have not been told that the person behind you must be protected, you will not be able to address some of the oversight, laziness, ignorance of the law, ignorance of the process, and lack of training. And so one of the ways that ballots are the election fraud occurs is when you have workers who are not properly trained. And that's where we are finding is lack of training. They're in a hurry, they're not sure what to do. But those clerical errors are mixed with clerical errors, but a lot of them are considered fraud. I would have referred all of them to the Attorney General if it were me. But Chris Thomas and others decided not to. They tried to remedy those things as best they can, but unless you put the full faith into the law and start prosecuting people, we will continue to see what we've been seeing. 71% of Detroit cannot be recounted. And I would not want to run on a Detroit city nothing at all. I would not want to run in the city of Detroit knowing that there have been, quote, clerical errors, that some of them are illegal. There are ballot carrying problems. We have seen people walk into the clerk's office in Detroit with a stack of 75 ballots. Janice Winfrey standing next to me. And this guy is not related to all of these people. He's not a postal worker, nor does he work for the clerk's office. These are ballot harvesting has been going on. Inez Brown in Flint has been, the clerk of City of Flint has been complaining about it. These are not clerical errors. These are what's been allowed. And when you have drop boxes for all of these urban areas to make it convenient, you do not have the ability to check the drop box and I'm putting in 50 ballots. If you don't compare the signatures, you toss the signature out. You don't compare the signatures, you're supposed to. It's in the law. We are not following the law, and we are not following it in every election. And the larger the jurisdiction, which are people of color, people who look like me, the more fraud that can be inserted into stealing an election. And that is a problem, and we need to stop it.
Okay, I almost am afraid to ask another question.
Ask the second question.
You've read the audits, you've seen them, we both read the audits.
They know me so
yeah, I know. We both read the audits. I'm just putting it out there that in fact it is part of Michigan election law that we have audits, and those audits have been done in recent elections, and they'll be done after this one as well. And I just want to put that out there. And then also, I want to.
You're talking about a
post-election.
Yes, but they're insufficient. They're insufficient for what the purpose is. I'm asking for a forensic audit of the election itself, looking for the fraud and illegal votes.
Yes, and I'm wondering why the Trump campaign didn't want to do a recount, which would have been the normal process.
Why would you recount 71% of the votes cannot be recounted? recount.
You know what, that's a problem, I would agree
I'm
with you.
just telling you,
I'm trying to build up to agree with you.
why waste your money and time? It costs money to do a recount. Why waste your money when 71% of the votes that you need to look at physically cannot be even seen?
Okay.
That
And that goes up to my next
29%,
question.
I'm not paying $2 million or $4 million for 29% of the ballots that can be counted, because the rest of them cannot be counted.
That's one of the reasons why I voted against the changes to the recall law that made it so onerous and difficult for people who wanted to look into these
Open
issues.
up the ballots.
The issue that you mentioned, and I just want to highlight for the committee, because I really agree with you on this, is that, you know, when you have a situation where there's a discrepancy at that precinct, those precincts should be recountable. And we need to find a way to make that so. And I think that what you're going to find here in Lansing is that there are a whole lot of Democrats who are going to agree with that. We want these ballots to be looked at. We want elections to be run in a safe and secure manner. But the problem is that this legislature has been controlled by Republicans since the 80s. The state Senate has been controlled by the Republicans since the 80s. And so my question to you is, after the 2016 election, when we saw the problems that we saw that you just hinted at, when we had agreement apparently between a lot of folks about the fact that these precincts should be recountable, why did we see no changes in the law to address any of these issues while we had a Republican governor, a Republican House, and a Republican Senate?
So I'd be happy to answer that question. That's a very simple one. We have sufficient laws on the books. So my brothers and sisters in the Republican GOP has done their due diligence to pass laws, make laws. The enforceability of the laws, however, because in Grand Traverse County, we're not having this problem. In certain counties, that Van Buren County, we're not having this hot mess problems that we have in Pontiac and in Flint and in Detroit. We don't have that. So if you want Republicans to pass more laws, why don't the Democrats in their cities enforce the doggone election laws so that we can have fair and just elections? Because I just gave you the law. It's a felony for me to give my friend, next door neighbor, my ballot. It's a misdemeanor for me to give it to them, and it's a felony for them to turn it in. A felony. It is not enforced. And we have situations in the inner cities and these Democrat-controlled areas, because that's what we're talking about. Democrat-controlled areas cannot seem to balance their elections. And because they have been habitual violators of the inability to balance their election because of either ignorance, apathy, lack of leadership, or lack of caring about their election integrity, because if you add more laws to the books, you still have people who will not follow the law. And if you don't enforce the law, if you don't bring in Republicans to say, I am going to be a poll worker, if you need 5 Republicans in the building, make sure 5 workers are. Contact the Michigan Republican Party, ask them for 5 people or 25 people or 200 people to work it. And then when the challengers come in, you protect them. You don't put them out, you don't call the police on them, you're supposed to protect them according to the law. If you follow the law in the urban Democratic controlled areas, then we would not be here today. I certainly wouldn't be here. But in 25 years that I've been monitoring elections, working with the Secretary of State, the last 8 doing election integrity, it's been a hot mess in the same Democrat-controlled areas. We don't need any more laws. We need to enforce the laws, and we need to open up the doggone ballot boxes.
But we are agreed that we need to change the laws on recounting precincts. We do agree that we need to change the law on recounting precincts, right?
Pardon?
We should change the law on recounting precincts. That was
We're not changing the laws for recounting.
But the question was about that specific law, allowing the recounting of imbalanced precincts.
No, we're not.
Change that law.
We're not trying to talk about recounting for imbalanced precinct. The balancing of the precinct can come at the counting board level. You think that the ballots come out and then all of a sudden it's given in and locked up in a box. It is not. Once it leaves the precinct, it goes to a counting board. They have the full authority to open up that ballot box because it's not balancing. If the seal is broken, if this is broken, they can reseal it. at the county board. There is a law with the county board, and it's lazy in the inner cities of color, of people who look like me, are not doing their job. And it needs to be done so that we can count 100% of the precincts instead of 29%. That's what needs to be done, is to make sure people are doing their job. You won't get that in an audit. What you will get in the current fake audits that we've been having, and these fluff audits that we've had right now, you will get, well, these can't be recounted, so okay, so we can't do that. Here's what we can. You'll get an audit of the 29% in Detroit that can be recounted. That's all you're going to get. Because we need to see the 71% of the fraud that has been locked up and will be destroyed after so many years. That's what we need to see.